If you want silver and you have an unallocated or a pool account, then you make certain that you get to allocated and or take delivery of it. And I would suggest you take delivery of it, even if you've got to redeploy it somewhere else. I mean, right now, to be fair, from my perspective, is to look at it as a backlog, not as a true shortage. So the first time I saw unallocated, the Sunshine Mint in Idaho, which I think they're closing down. I think they moved everything to Las Vegas, but it's the primary producer of the planchettes, commonly known as blanks, for the U.S. Silver Liberty, commonly known as the Silver Eagle. So I went through that very early, meaning, you know, I've been here since 1999. I would think about 2000, 2001, I was actually asked to do an audit for the then Werner von Nothaus and his coin. I forget the name of it. And they had it stored at the Sunshine Mint. So I drove over there and got a full tour. Of course, did the security thing and walked through the metal detector and all that. And it was quite fascinating because I've been to several now, but at that time it was my first trip to a mint. And I saw all these commercial bars on these pallets just kind of stacked one over one on top of the other. And it was, look, I was kind of calculating how much, fiat that was worth. And I said, well, what's that? And he goes, well, that's, our unallocated silver. And I realized more deeply what unallocated meant. I mean, that's their working stock that they work with to go from those 1,000-ounce bars into those 1-ounce, blanks that also then get sent to be pressed out into coins or stamped. And I thought, wow, that's interesting, because really, from my perspective, and I'm not sure I've got this 100% right, but it's sort of the working inventory of the mint is unallocated. And, if there's a pile left over or whatever, and someone says, hey, I want it, because you kind of help finance the silver for the mint in a way. At least that's how I look at it. Mm-hmm. But it really sunk in home to me what it meant. And it means that it's there, and maybe then it's not there. And of course, you have to look at your specific contract with your specific entity. I don't want to broad brush it and, well, wait a minute, David, my contract says this, so dig deep. But really, there's an advantage as far as having exposure to silver because it costs less as unallocated. But it really doesn't guarantee in most cases that you really have it. So my suggestion strongly is to, if you want silver and you have an unallocated or a pool account, then you make certain that you get to allocated and or take delivery of it. And I would suggest you take delivery of it, even if you've got to redeploy it somewhere else. And one strategy, which I'm sure you know, Kenzie, but just, it's new people, and it's like, well, I'm not sure what to do, so I'll state the obvious. If you have an unallocated account with XYZ bullion, you could very easily sell it for fiat and then take that same fiat and make a call 5 minutes later to a dealer that has it and then pay up, because you're going from basically a paper price into a physical price. So now you're paying $4 more per ounce or 4.5 or whatever it is, but it's worth it. And then you set your order in and you wait for delivery. So that's one way to do it. In other words, you don't necessarily have to call up XYZ and say, hey, I want to go from unallocated to allocated, especially if you get an answer like, well, we're getting a lot of calls now, or, they start giving you the short shrift. Fine, liquidate me immediately. I want my check, as soon as possible, or wire it or whatever. So hopefully I covered that. I want to be fair, because right now, again, I'm going to repeat it. I have to say, right now, it looks more like a backlog. And again, if I didn't explain it, it's that silver's out there. It's just not in the form that, you want. If you've got an unallocated account of 100-ounce bars from RCM, the Royal Canadian Mint, and you don't have them, and you say, I want them, you may darn well get them, but you might have to wait 8 weeks or something. So I don't want to make it like, oh, it's absolutely here, the silver shortage, it's over, the dominoes are falling. And yet I can't rule that out. But I also want to be fair, because no mint has stepped forward and said, force majeure, there's an act of nature, we cannot make good on it. Although there's been some instances of that from what I've read and talked to John Adams about, covering a lot on the Perth Mint. So again, I want to be fair. I want to be tilted more toward the it's okay as is, but the stress is definitely there. There's no excuse. There's a lot of stress in the silver market. There's congestion at every level. Call it backlog. I like the word congestion, even in the commercial bar market, which tells me the market's pretty darn tight, because you don't see a silver block, those big ingots, selling at a premium ever. I've never seen it before, and they are. So that means somebody wants it pretty badly and are willing to pay a premium to get it. Knowing what the oversell is, how much hypothecation is, people lease silver. No, you know, a contract is legal. I mean, but is the contract valid or not? And so, you know, if the contract says you have exposure to silver from our working inventory or from an unallocated account, and they oversell it by, let's say, 10 to 1 as an example, knowing full well that maybe 1 out of 100 ever go from unallocated to allocated, you know, that's a business decision made by the entity that gave you the contract for unallocated. But if everybody stepped up to the plate and said, I want the physical now, you know, I want the physical as soon as possible, then that would cause a backlog. And it could cause basically, let's say, a moment of truth where we find out that they cannot fulfill all those orders. Everything is done. And there's a chapter in the book, The Silver Manifesto, about fractional reserve banking and fractional reserve bullion banking. And this is how the goldsmiths did it of old, and it's still done today, and it works almost always until it doesn't work. Basically, when you have a bank run, and you know, It's a Wonderful Life is a movie that shows that at the end of the movie, you know, that's a bank run in, you know, traditional sense. But a run on bullion banks, you might say, that's a whole different animal, because now you're dealing with money versus currency. And, you know, the default of the COMEX is impossible because the contract says we can pay you off in fiat. But if they started paying off in fiat, what signal would that send to the market? Exactly. One hell of a big one, because all of us with 2 brain cells would know that's actually a default. So they're going to do their best to make sure that they stay within the parameters that they've outlined, and they are going to try to make every delivery possible, but they're protected because they have a limit on the amount of physical that can be delivered, which is 1,500 contracts, which is 7.5 million ounces. Now, they have delivered more than that several times. So, but they have that option. So if things start getting tighter and tighter, you might see them pull that card and say, look, we're only delivering this or that because of, and they'll have some excuse that probably won't make sense to us, but would certainly make sense to the mainstream financial press.